Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is Narayan Rao Kovar. In this video, I am going to explain theory of consumer surplus. Theory of consumer surplus. What is the meaning of consumer surplus? What is the definition? What are the assumptions? Table explanation, diagram explanation. So we will examine one by one. First of all, what is the introduction to the theory of consumer surplus? Theory of consumer surplus was propounded by Alfred Marshall. Theory of consumer surplus was propounded by Alfred Marshall. It is derived from the law of diminishing marginal utility. The demand for a commodity depends on the utility of that commodity to a consumer. The demand for a commodity depends on the utility of that commodity to a consumer. So here, if the consumer gets more utility from a commodity, the consumer gets more utility from a commodity, he will be willing to pay a higher price than what he actually pays. It is very clear. So, the consumer gets more utility from a commodity. The consumer gets more utility from a commodity. He will be willing to pay a higher price than what he actually pays. So, and vice versa. That means if the consumer gets less utility from a commodity, he will be willing to pay lower price than what he actually pays. That is called vice versa. Vice versa means opposite. The extra satisfaction is called consumer surplus. The extra satisfaction is called consumer surplus. Here, willing price is indicated by marginal utility curve. Willing price is indicated by marginal utility curve, and actually paying is indicated by market price or actual price. Here, willing price is indicated by MU curve, actually paying is indicated by actual price or market price. Consumer surplus is observed in the goods whose value in use, so that is marginal utility, greater than value in exchange, that is called actual price. Generally, consumer surplus is observed in the goods whose value in is greater than value in exchange. In some goods, value in use is more, value in exchange is less. So here we observed consumer surplus. That is, salt, value in use is more, value in exchange is less. Newspaper, value in use is more, value in exchange is less. Likewise, public transport, life saving drugs, etc. etc. In some commodities, value in is more than value in exchange. Here we observed consumer surplus. For example, salt, newspaper, public transport, life saving drugs, matchbox, etc. etc. So, this is the introduction to the consumer surplus. Next, definition of consumer surplus. The excess of price which he would be willing to pay rather than to go without the thing over that which he actually does pay is the economic measure of his surplus satisfaction, is known as consumer surplus according to Alfred Marshall. According to Alfred Marshall, he stated that consumer surplus is the difference between willing price minus actual price, or what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. That is called consumer surplus. Once again, the excess of price which he would be willing to pay rather than to go without the thing over that which he actually does pay is the economic measure of his surplus satisfaction by Alfred Marshall. This definition given by Alfred Marshall. According to Alfred Marshall, consumer surplus is equal to what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. In other words, willing price minus actual price. In other words, marginal utility minus price, or value in use minus value in exchange. Likewise, next, what are the formulas to calculate consumer surplus? Consumer surplus is equal to what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. What a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. Consumer surplus is not net monetary benefit, it is a psychological feeling only. It is not a net monetary benefit, it is a psychological feeling only. Therefore, consumer surplus is equal to what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. In other, willing price minus actual price, marginal utility minus price, value in use minus value in exchange. Likewise, next, assumptions. Theory of consumer surplus depends upon some assumptions. What are the basic assumptions of marginal utility analysis will apply in this theory also? What are the assumptions? Consumer is a rational consumer, cardinal measurability of utility, units of a commodity should be homogeneous, divisible, and standard in size, continuity in production or continuity in consumption, and hypothesis of independent utility, marginal utility of money remains constant, taste and preference income remains constant. These are the basic assumptions of marginal utility analysis. All assumptions will apply in this theory also. There one more assumption is there is a perfect competition prevailing in the market, uniform price prevailing in the market. These are the assumptions of theory of consumer surplus. Next, table explanation. If you observe the table, number of units of X, marginal utility, price, consumer surplus, inference. So number of units of X taken 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Marginal utility 30, 28, 26, 24, 22, 20, 18. So units of a commodity increases, marginal utility of a commodity decreases. The reason is LDMU, law of diminishing marginal utility. And price is 20 because perfect competition prevailing in the market, uniform price in the market. Consumer surplus is equal to MU minus price. Here MU minus price. Consumer surplus is equal to marginal utility minus price. In this table, how to calculate consumer surplus? Marginal utility minus price. Marginal utility minus price. 30 minus 20, 10. 28 minus 28, 26 minus 26, and so on. So that is called consumer surplus. Inference. If we observe the table, there is an inverse relationship between price and consumer surplus. A consumer surplus and price inversely related. If the price rises, consumer surplus falls. If the price falls, consumer surplus rises. There is an inverse relationship between consumer surplus and price. Right, table explanation. Consumer surplus is closely related to demand curve. MU curve ne demand curve anta. MU curve is also referred as demand curve. Consumer surplus is closely related to demand curve. Consumption of a good increases, marginal utility decreases. The reason is LDMU. In this theory, consumption of a good increases, marginal utility of a commodity decreases. The reason is LDMU, law of diminishing marginal utility. The price of X is 20 because there is a perfect competition prevails in the market. Next, TU. So area under MC curve, area under MU curve, area under MU curve up to point Q. This is area under MU curve up to Q. That is called total utility. That is OD or Q. Area under MU curve up to OQ. That is area under MU curve up to OQ. OD or Q. That is called total utility. OD or Q. Height of the demand curve measures the willingness to pay for it, that is MU. The height of the demand curve, that is called MU curve, that is MU. Slopes downwards from left to right, that is called demand curve. And here market price is OP. This is market price OP. OP or RQ is the market price. Consumer actually pays is OP or Q. OP or Q. Willing price is OD or Q. Actual price is OP or Q. Consumer surplus is equal to PDR. So here willing price is equal to OD or Q. So actual price is equal to OP or Q. Consumer surplus is equal to PDR triangle. PDR triangle is called consumer surplus. So here, so stage 1, it can be explained in 3 stages. Stage 1, MUX greater than PX. Consumer enjoys consumer surplus. Continue in purchases. Consumer continues in purchases. Consumer enjoys consumer surplus. Here up to 1 to 5. There is a consumer surplus. MUX greater than PX. Consumer enjoys consumer surplus. Continues in purchases. So enjoys consumer surplus. Total consumer surplus from 5 units is equal to 30. 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2, that is equal to 30. MU curve slopes downwards and lies above the price line. MU curve slopes downwards and above the price line in the stage 1. Stage 2, MUX is equal to PX. Consumer is in equilibrium. So consumer surplus is 0. Total consumer surplus from 6 units is 30. Consumer surplus is PDR. This is OD or Q is the willing price. OP or Q is the actual price. Consumer surplus is equal to willing price minus actual price. That is called PDR is called consumer surplus. In the second stage, the consumer is in equilibrium. Consumer gets from sixth point, only sixth point, consumer surplus is 0. Stage 3, MUX less than PX. MUX less than PX, consumer gets dissatisfaction. Consumer gets dissatisfaction. Consumer will not purchase. Consumer will not purchase. Consumer surplus is negative. Consumer surplus is negative. So this is something the information regarding theory of consumer surplus, table explanation and diagram explanation.